What's up, guys? Welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about numbers and how numbers are used in JavaScript. Okay, so I'm going to make a file called 9-numbers.html, and we'll get our boilerplate HTML code here, and I'll name the document JS numbers. And we'll make our script tags, and we'll write all of the JavaScript in there. Alright, so I have just a couple notes to go over that I'll copy and paste in here that you can copy down in your own file if you want to pause the video. So it says numbers in JavaScript are also called integers. Okay, that's like the programming way of referring to numbers. You might hear somebody call them integers, but they're just numbers. Unlike strings, numbers are not wrapped in quotes. If you do wrap a number in quotes, the browser will interpret it as a string. So that's an important thing, and we'll go over that in more detail, but generally speaking, when you declare numbers, like you just write out the number. You don't wrap it in quotes or anything like that. You can do basic math calculations with numbers in JavaScript, and we'll go over that. And there's a bunch of built-in methods that make working with numbers easy. Alright, so let's just start with a simple example of making numbers in JavaScript. So we'll make a comment here and put numbers in JS. And I'll just make a variable. I'll call it let my numbers, and we'll put that equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I'll just log it to the console. Say console.log my numbers. And let's go ahead. I'm going to launch the page here with live server, and we'll look at our console. I'm going to right click and inspect, and then go to the console. Get rid of that error message, and there we go. There's our number. So notice how I'm in dark mode right now, but notice how the number is showing up in purple, okay? So it shows up a little. Usually I think strings are like white, numbers show up in purple. And no matter how your browser's configured, numbers and strings will usually be different colors in the console. But then I'll also show you how to check on if something is a number or a string, because that's something that you'll be doing a lot when you're making programs and converting, data strings to numbers and numbers to strings. So, well, let's go ahead now. We'll do some basic math with numbers. I'll show you that. So we'll say math with numbers. And we'll start out with addition. So I'll say let sum equals 10. And we'll just say 10 plus 20 here. And we'll log that to the console, so that should be 30. So we'll say console.log and sum, and there it is. Got 30, so we did that correctly. Let's do subtraction. So I'll just say let total equals 100 minus 50. And we'll do console.log total. And yep, 100 minus 50 is 50. We did get that in the console, so good. We'll do multiplication. So let's say multiply. And we'll say let product equals 5. And then the multiplication symbol in programming is an asterisk. So asterisk, so 5 times 5. And we'll say console.log product. And 5 times 5 is 25, so there we go. And we'll do division. So we'll say division. We'll say let quotient is equal to 8. And then divided by is a / and 2. So it says 8 divided by 2. Whoops. And we'll do console.log and quotient. And there we go. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and we did get that in our console. So that's how you do math in JavaScript, guys. So now that you know that, a lot of times, if I'm in Google or even if I'm on my iPhone, just trying to do stuff, and I need to figure out a math problem, I'll literally do it in there, because JavaScript or the browser, Google and the browser will it's all written in JavaScript, right? So it'll do the same thing for you. So if I want to know really quick, 98 times 7, you could literally type that in your browser, and it'll come up. It knows what you're talking about, obviously, because Google's web developers, so they built all this into the browser. But that's pretty cool. Just a little thing here that you can do now, since since you understand a little bit about coding and JavaScript and numbers. So that's pretty cool. Most people wouldn't think to do that. But now we're going to move on to differentiating numbers and what they look like in the console and strings, because sometimes when you're building programs, you'll be working with both strings and numbers, and you might get confused about what is what from time to time, and I'll show you why. But I just want to show you like the difference between strings and numbers. We'll look at that in the console. So we'll say numbers. We'll make a comment saying numbers in the JS console. Okay, so we'll say let x equals 22. And we'll console.log x, and there's 22. And now I can make sure that that is really a number other than knowing that it's purple by saying console.log and using typeof, which is like a little built-in function of JavaScript called typeof, and then parentheses, and then x, my variable. It'll tell me what type of data type x is equal to. And it is a number, okay? So that is actually, like I said, that's something that you'll commonly be doing when like you have a bug or something wrong with an application or a website that you're working on. Sometimes the issue will be that JavaScript is interpreting a string as a number or a number as a string, and you'll do console.log typeof to like make sure that it's doing what it should be doing, and if it's not, then you know what to fix. So let's just show you now. We'll say let y, and we'll make a string of 22, put it in quotes, and we'll console.log y. And now look, see, it's white, like I said. It'll be different color. So depending on what your color settings are for your browser, this could turn out to be like blue and then numbers are black or whatever. But you can see it's a different color. And then again, we'll do the type of. So we can say console.log type of. And we'll put y as our parameter. And it even tells you, hey, this is a string, okay? So that brings me to another thing that I want to show you. So in our last lesson, we learned that the plus operator helps us bring strings together with variables and different strings. But we now know that we can also do math with that when we're using numbers. We can add stuff together. But you have to be careful. If you ever have like the plus operator and you're trying to add a string and a number, you can't just add them, because what'll happen is if there's a string in your data and a number, and then you try to like do something with it, it'll just count the string or the number. It'll convert it. JavaScript will convert it into a string automatically. So, in other words, if strings and numbers get in a wrestling match, the string always wins. Okay, so that might be a little confusing, but I'll show you like some real examples here. So let's say let string versus number, and I'll say 100 plus 100. So knowing what we know, what do you think that's going to come out to? Go ahead and think about that for a second. And then I'll show you. So we'll do console.log. So is it going to be 200, or is it going to be a string or a number? Let's see what happens. So string versus number. And it came out as a string because it's in white. And it just, instead of adding them, it just combined them, like I said, because there's a string here. So it automatically combined this into a string when we hit the plus symbol here. And we got the string of 100, 100. And then just to make sure that I'm right, I can say console.log. And then we'll use that type of again. And we'll put the string versus number variable. And there it'll say, look, it's a string. Okay? So another example of this that we can go over. We'll make another variable. Say let string versus number 2. And we'll put it equal to 30 plus, this time we'll do the number first. So 30 plus 40. And let's console.log string versus number 2. Save. And again, we get the string and just combine them together into a string of 30, 40. All right, so let's just use some built-in JavaScript methods. So I'll make a comment here. It says JS number methods. And remember, we learned about these in our last lesson, strings, little built-in functions. You'll put like dot and then the function name and sometimes a parameter. It's the same thing with numbers. So we'll start out first. I'll just show you a couple common ones. So we have a method called toFixed. And what toFixed will do is it'll round up a number and show a certain amount of, it'll show a certain amount of decimal places depending on the parameter. So what does that mean? Well, I'll show you here. So let's just say let, and we'll say num equals 5.56789. Okay, and then we can log that to the console. And there's our number, 5.56789. But let's say I only want to show these first two decimals here of that number. So I can log it again. I can say console.log. I can say num dot toFixed parentheses, and then in those parentheses after toFixed I can specify how many decimals I want to show. So I'll just say I want to show only the first two, and now we got 5.57. And look what it also did. So it did 5.57 because 5.56, it just rounded that up because it's 789 after here. So it rounded up. And then it also converted this into a string. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So that's another thing that JavaScript does is some built-in methods like toFixed it'll show you decimals and it'll do what you want it to do, but you have to be careful because then it'll actually by default turn this into a string. And that might not be what you want to do based on what kind of program you're using. So be careful of that, okay? But again, don't worry about all that. I'm just showing you, that there's methods and numbers. So don't let that scare you. There is actually, speaking of strings, there's a method called toString. And that will return a number as a string. And you might be wondering, why are all these things, why is there so many methods with strings converting to numbers and numbers converting to strings? And that's because, basically when you're making web applications with JavaScript or any other language, the whole purpose of most applications is to get people to submit data via a form or something like that, or get user input from a form. And then when you're collecting that data and putting it into a database in a full-fledged application, depending on what your app does, you might numbers. You might have to have everything be stored as a string so that it can go in the database correctly, or vice versa. You might have to have your numbers return as numbers specifically, so that they store correctly in a database. So that's the big why. That's the big picture. Again, don't worry about that now, but I know that when I was learning all of this stuff, I was wondering why I was learning all this theory about this stuff like that, and this is why. But of course, the instructors never told me that, so I kind of zoned out and I didn't care. But then when it came down to it, I had to relearn everything. So yeah, I just like to let you guys always know the big picture of why we're learning certain stuff. But anyway, let's continue here. So again, we're gonna use toString, return number as a string. So I'll say let num2, and then I'll put that equal to 49745, just a random number. And we'll say console.log num2. There it is as a number, 49,845. And then we can turn into a string by saying console.log and saying num2 dot toString. So here's the toString method in parentheses, just leave them empty. And there we go. Now we have a string, okay? And again, we can tell that because it changed color. All right, so another important thing that we'll go over that is like really common with numbers in JavaScript is using the math method. So we'll put a comment here and say using the math method. And the math method basically just helps you manipulate numbers and decimals and even generate random numbers. And there's a ton of, so everything that I'm showing you guys, you can just Google JS math method and you can get like a whole list of stuff, or whatever, the math object, I'm sorry, not the math method. Methods and objects, they're all pretty much the same thing. It's just built-in functionality that JavaScript gives you, okay? But so we got like Math.round, Math.ceil, Math.floor, all these things, okay? You can go over, the whole list. So Math.square root, get the square root of a number. All these things that you can do in JavaScript, and you'll be seeing the math method or math object a lot. So we'll just put parentheses math object. But let's do a couple of them that are a little more common. So we'll just do like rounding a number up because that's pretty common. And that is using the Math.ceil method. Okay, so ceil like ceiling, go up, right? Kind of makes sense. So let's say let decimal 1 equals to 9.746. Okay, we got a decimal number there. And now we want to console.log it, and we want to round that thing up. So let's say console.log, and then we'll wrap our variable decimal 1 in math.ceil. So let's say math.ceil, parentheses, and then put decimal 1 in there. Boom. And what did it do? So it took 9.746 and rounded it up to 10. Okay? So that's how that works. Again, that's something that you'll commonly be doing if you're making applications with JavaScript. And then along with Math.ceil, there is, of course, rounding down with something called Math.floor. So I'll put rounding. Rounding down with Math.floor. And then let's just say let decimal 2 equal to 7.687. And then we'll round that down. So I'll say console.log math.floor. And then we'll put decimal 2 in here. There. And now it rounded 7.687 down to 7. Okay? So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to get random numbers with JavaScript. And this is used a lot, guys. Random numbers. This is used when you want to get random numbers, when you want to get like a random list of stuff or random characters, random pictures to display to people. Behind the scenes, it's all using the math.random is what it's called, okay? So, and that, so I'll show you that now. So let's make a comment and say generating random numbers with math.random. And this is where stuff starts to get fun, guys, because it's actually pretty cool to mess around with math.random. So let's just do it on its own. Let's just say let random num equal to math.random. And let's see what that does just by itself without adding anything, any parameter in here, anything like that. So let's say console.log random num, save. And what did it do? gave us this big long decimal. So what happens if I refresh the page? Another one. Huh. So it's giving this these big long random decimal numbers. That's what it does by default, okay? So it'll give us a number between 0.000000 and 0.99999. That's what it does, okay? A bunch of nines, however many decimal places are in there. So that's what it does by default. But by adding by stringing together different math objects like that we just learned, we can actually get it to generate like whole numbers for us that make more sense. So let's do an example of that. And I'm going to use Math.random and Math.floor to generate a random whole number. And I'll say between 1 and 20. So let's do, we'll do 0 and 20. Okay. So I'll show you how we'll do that here. We'll say let random whole num, and we'll put that equal to Math.floor, because we want to get rid of the decimals. And then in our parentheses, we'll put our Math.random in our parentheses there, and then we'll multiply it by whatever number we want to be the highest. And in this case, it's going to be 20. Actually, we're going to want, since it's 20, we want it to be 21. Okay? Because it's going to omit the last number by default. And so we'll say console.log, and we'll say random whole num. And now look right here. So we get a 6, a 13. So you can just keep refreshing, guys, and it'll go from 0 to 20 randomly. So if you just keep clicking refresh really fast, you'll see all the numbers cycling through. Pretty cool. Oh, there we go. We finally hit 20. Okay. So you might want to more practically get a random whole number between 1 and whatever number. And to do that, I'll show you what to do. Just got to add a little more code. So let's say generate random whole number between 1 and 9. So to do that, we're going to go we'll just say random is equal to Math.floor, and then again Math.random parentheses, and then I want to do it between 1 and 9, so I'll say times 9 is my highest number, and then I just want it to be between 1 and 9, so I'll say plus 1. And that little plus 1 will make it so that our random number will only be between 1 and whatever number is listed here, okay? So now console.log that. Console.log random, save, and there we go. So we have 7. Let's see what different ones we can get here. 2, 1, 6, 2, 3, 9. There's 9. We hit 9. 9 again. 4. Okay. 5, 9 again. 7. So knowing what we know now, just sticking with Math.random, I want to issue a challenge to you, okay? And you should be able to do it because we've went over, multiple examples now. But just to make sure you're paying attention here, I want you to try to pause the video and generate a random whole number between 1 and 12 and log that result to the console. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and I'll wait a second here, and I'll let you give that a try. If you don't get it the first time, that's okay. We'll do it together. Okay, so go ahead and try that now. All right, hopefully that wasn't too hard. So let's go ahead and do it together. So I'll say let 1, 2, 12, and that's going to be equal to Math.floor. and then Math.random. And then we'll multiply by 12, and then we'll do plus 1. Okay, just like we did above. And then we'll say console.log 1 to 12. Okay, so there we go. Down here we have 5. See what we get. 11, 1, 9, 6, 12. We hit 12. Okay, so that's as high as it'll go, just all between 1 and 12. So if you got that, awesome job. You're getting the hang of this. If not, that's okay. Like I always tell you guys, I'm a really slow learner, and it took me a long time to grasp all this stuff. So trust me, if I can eventually learn it and get good, you can too. You just got to keep trying. So let's just end with like a little mini project here. And let's make, just to make this more fun, let's make a random dice game using everything that we learned with numbers and what we learned from our last lesson with strings, okay? So we're just going to make a little dice game that logs to the console here. So let's do that. So we'll say let, and we'll set a variable to random dice 1. We'll have 2 die. So we'll say random dice 1, and that's going to be equal to Math.floor. Whoops. Equals Math.floor Math.random parentheses, and then we'll do times 12, because each die has, well, actually no, we'll do 6. Each die will just be a 6 die, like regular, and then plus 1. So random die 1 should be a number between 1 and 6, just like a dice. And then I'm just going to copy this down and call the second dice random dice 2, because it's all going to be the same here. And then I'll log a whole sentence out to the console telling us what we rolled and how much we rolled in total. So we'll say console.log. And remember in our last lesson I taught you how to concatenate your strings with different data using template strings. So remember using the 2 backticks. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, guys, I suggest you go back and watch my strings lesson, so this all makes more sense. But we'll do a template string here, and we'll send a message to the console every time we refresh the page. We'll say you rolled a, and then we'll put our variable in here with our money sign and curly braces, and we'll put random die 1. I'll say you rolled whatever random die 1 is, and a, and then whatever random die 2 is. And then we'll say for a total of, and then we'll do money curly braces again, and we'll say we want to get the total of random dice 1 plus random dice 2. And we'll put that. Okay. So there we go. Look at, so I saved, and then we got our message here. You rolled a 4 and a 2. So our random dice were a 4 and a 2. These 2 numbers. And it was a total of 6. So we rolled a 6. So if we refresh the page, we'll keep getting different rolls here. So refresh. You rolled a 3 and a 3 for a total of 6. Okay, so we still got 6 again randomly. There we go. You rolled a 6 and a 5 for a total of 11. So as you can see, like stuff like this, guys, using numbers and Math.random and Math.floor and all these things that we're learning, this is how like real games are made. Like let's say we were going to make a JavaScript version of like Monopoly, and then we had to make the functionality for people to roll dice. So of course we would have like on-screen stuff. It wouldn't just be going to the console, but behind the scenes it's just code like this that's running. Okay, so hopefully that kind of gets your brain thinking of like how games and stuff are made in the background using Math.random. So again, you rolled a 4 and a 5 for a total of 9. We'll do one more, and you rolled a 6 and a 2. Okay, so that's just a fun little random dice game. And that's really all you need to know for numbers. Those are just the basics, and then just some methods. Again, guys, don't try to memorize any of this code. This is just to get your feet wet and get you thinking about, numbers and how they work with JavaScript. When you're building stuff in the real world, you'll have to constantly Google and look up how to do certain things. But if you know what you're trying to accomplish, you'll be able to find the answer and write whatever code you need, right? So anyway, I do want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.